Hey, hey, hey! You know what time it is! Get into it! I'll try to get this right sometime. One of these days, I'm gonna just have to get a book that, like, doesn't fly away into the wind. So, we are back with the Redwall series. Well, actually, I found out this book is number 7 chronologically, but technically, publication-wise, this is the first. Of course, I do not own the music you are hearing in the background. I wish I did. I wish. This is an amazing franchise, but that is neither here nor there. So, last time we were here, Matthias found Asmodeus' lair and found Martin's sword. But unfortunately, Logalog, the shrew, the leader of the guerrilla union of shrews, saw Gaussum's dead body in one of the tunnels and got freaked out and yelled out, and now Asmodeus is awake. This is why we go into the thick of it alone. Into the thick of it. Yeah, friends don't blab, even if they are shocked. Let's skip that, because that's not the mood I'm looking for. There we go. Chapter 7. The captains of Redwall looked to Constance for guidance. There was no question of overriding her commands. Of all the Woodlanders, she was the oldest and wisest creature within the walls. The Badger was slow-thinking and deliberate, but straight as a die. Her knowledge was born of vast experience, the natural cunning of a survivor. Jess, Winifred, and Basil stood solidly behind Constance. They had just related to her the latest piece of intelligence received. The attackers would emerge from their completed tunnel sometime around mid-afternoon. The Badger thanked them and shook her strapped head knowingly. She had not been caught off guard thanks to Formal. Now she would need the aid and specialized know-how of the mole leader to stave off this latest threat to the Abbey. Clooney the Scourge was still acting strangely. He sat in his patched-up tent at the far edge of the meadow and said nothing. Even when Kilconey marched jubilantly up with news that the tunnel was within a fraction of being completed, Clooney sat and stared at the ground. He did not appear in the least bit moved by the good tidings. The ferret stood awkwardly, ill at ease, awaiting orders. Clooney sat unmoving, as if he had forgotten Kilconey's presence. The ferret tried once more. "It's the tunnel, Chief! We'll have it ready by this afternoon!" The warlord looked up blankly. "Ah, yes, the tunnel. Well, carry on, you know what to do. I've got things to think about," he muttered absently. Outside in the meadow, Fangburn and Darkclaw listened in disbelief to the ferret. "I tell you, he's off his rocker," said Kilconey, "sitting there like a stuffed dummy. Ha! Things to think about, if you please. Meanwhile, we got the whole horde ready to go through that tunnel and take the Abbey. What are we supposed to do?" "There's only one thing we can do," replied the stolid Darkclaw. "We're going to carry it through ourselves while the chief's not well." "Darkclaw's right," agreed Fangburn. "The three of us will take charge of the whole business." They both looked at the ferret, waiting for him to express an opinion. "I suppose you're right," Kilconey said. "But listen, the rest of the army mustn't get to know about the chief. Otherwise they'll desert. You know, I can't seriously believe that Clooney's out of his mind. Just you wait and see. It's probably just another grand old plan he's coming up with." The trio of self-appointed generals marched down to the tunnel. They climbed inside to check upon progress. It was long, dark, and smelly. Weasels and stoats jostled past them, carrying baskets of earth or dragging rocks and roots. Kilconey pointed out the finer details to his fellow commanders. "Sure, we're right underneath the road now. The ground is good and hard. I don't need any shoring at all. Now see the footings of the wall? Mind your heads. From here I have some props put in hold of the weight. Farther on the going gets really soft. But we've got a run of decent timber. Still, I don't reckon it'll make a great deal of difference. If we move the army along fast enough, we should all be inside Abbey before they know what's hit them." Above ground, a mole leaning his ear against a thinly beaten copper basin that was upturned on the earth listened carefully to every word the ferret was saying. He repeated it to Brother Walter, who wrote everything down word for word. Constance scanned the report and picked up her heavy cudgel. "Before we know what's hit us, eh?" she growled. "Well, we'll be doing some hitting of our own before the day is done." From the southwest corner of the wall, moles had marked the exact run of the tunnel with 2 lines of cord and pegs. Formo and his team knew all there was to know about the diggings: deft, approximate dimensions, the placement of shoring, even where the first rat's head was likely to break ground. The plan that Constance and Formo had jointly worked out would require very little hand-to-hand combat, much to the Badger's displeasure. Apparently, Constance woke up and chose violence, which is not good, kids. Peace is always the first option, unless you're being pushed in a position where you could be caused bodily harm. Then you go tell an adult, and if an adult is not available, you tell another adult that may not be nearby, but you go find one. If they're not available, you tell your mom and dad. If they're not available, you tell your guardian. And then, after all options are voided, then you take it upon yourself to handle it, respectfully. 2 oversized cauldrons of boiling water stood ready on tripods with slow fires burning beneath them to keep up the temperature. Constance and the beaver positioned themselves behind these tipstaves at the ready. All available mice and woodland creatures were gathered in 2 groups. On either side of the cord-marked aisle, they waited, looking to the Badger for further instructions. To a passing stranger, it might have looked like some strange abbey ritual. 2 fires, 2 parallel cords, and all the serious-faced creatures gathered in 2 groups on the grass in the hot June afternoon, waiting silently. The armed ranks of the horde were formed up in the ditch. Fangburn marched up and down, issuing final instructions. It had not been an easy task getting them in line without Clooney there, but the persuasive tongue of Kilconey had assured them that the chief was aware of their every move, and would deal with malcontents and troublemakers later on. "Pay attention now," Fangburn called. "Darklaw is up at the end of the tunnel. When the diggers break through, he will leap up into the Abbey grounds. 4 soldiers are with him. They'll hold off any attack while the rest of us get above ground. Now, once you're up, don't hang about. Make straight for the Abbey building. Try to capture the Mouse Abbot. Darklaw won't be with you. He'll take some warriors and fight his way through to the gate. Once it's open, the others will be able to get in. I don't need to tell you. These are not peaceful creatures we are up against. You see for yourselves. They've had a certain amount of luck today, but they're determined fighters. So when you get up there, Clooney wants you to show them what a horde of trained soldiers can really do. Don't forget, the chief knows how to reward good fighters when it comes to splitting plunder." Clooney had fallen asleep in his tent. He needed peace to clear his troubled mind. But peace was not easy to come by when the mouse warrior visited his dreams once more. Try as he would, Clooney could not evade the grim avenger with the sword. Shades of creatures that he had slain throughout the years came to mock him. They got in his way, tripping him so that he stumbled and fell. Each time he would rise warily and start to run again, the nemesis at his back, pursuing, striding unhurriedly, never changing pace as the wraiths of the dead captains, Skullface, Red Tooth, Rag-Ear, and Cheese Thief, hovered about, urging him to turn and face the warrior mouse, but he dared not turn. He kept running. The 2 weasel diggers thrust upwards in the narrow confines of the tunnel. They sprang aside as earth showered down and daylight poured in. With a seething press of soldiers behind him, Darklaw stepped up to the waiting diggers. They boosted him upwards. He grabbed at the grass, his spear tucked under one claw. He stopped suddenly, his body halfway out the hole. The first thing he saw were 2 huddled crowds of small creatures. They stood either side of a double line of pegs and rope. Darklaw grinned wolfishly. They were obviously playing some kind of silly little country game. He had caught them unarmed. A noise from behind distracted the rat. He swiveled around. He found himself facing 2 huge cauldrons which boiled and simmered ominously over twin fires. Behind them stood the big badger and another strange-looking creature equally well-built. Darklaw set his claws against the ground to level his body out of the hole. Before he could do anything to stop them, the badger and her companion tipped the bulky pots over. Darkclaw did not even get a chance to scream out a death cry. Boiling water cascaded down over his head in a hissing, steaming deluge. The force of the rushing water sent his body plummeting down the hole. Endless gallons of scalding water hit the rats in the tunnel like a hellish tidal wave. The tightly packed rodents were instantly slain. On the surface, Constance cried out to the waiting defenders. "Jump in! Between the ropes now!" The weight of combined bodies hit the ground between the lines. Constance began a steady chant. "Jump, 2, 3, jump, 2, 3, jump, 2, 3, jump!" Under the constant pounding of countless feet, the whole area that had been marked out by the moles suddenly sank into a trench. The tunnel had collapsed. The defenders stood and cheered in the depression directly above what had once been Kilcody's tunnel. The Badger gave the order to stop. Formole and his crew moved in to block off the hole with rocks and rubble. Friar Hugo ordered the cauldrons to be carried back inside to his kitchens. The abbey creatures fell silent and drifted away from the heap of stones which blocked the hole, a fitting headstone for a massive grave of the enemy. At the tunnel entrance in the ditch, Fangbird and Kilcody were madly thrust aside as rats, weasels, ferrets, and stoats fought their way out of the tunnel. "Hey, what's happened?" Fangbird shouted. "Come back here this minute! Where do you think you're all going?" The defeated warriors ignored him. Caked with filthy mud and trailing broken spears, they dashed off along the ditch. Kilcody peered into the tunnel. All he saw was the battered body of a stoat being borne towards him on what appeared to be a boiling wave of ooze. The ferret jumped backwards as the shoring burst and the tunnel workings caved in with a dull rumble of earth. As Clooney ran, another spectre appeared in his fever dream. It was a hideous-looking thing covered in a dark, steaming substance. It stood barring his way with its arms stretched wide as if to embrace him. Clooney pushed it savagely away from him. It moaned piteously, "Chief, it's me, Darkclaw! Look what they did to me!" Outside the tent, Kilcody and Fangbird exchanged uneasy glances. You dug the tunnel, so you go in first." "No fear, I'm only a ferret. You're a natural superior rat. You better go first." "Shall we go in together, then?" "Better not. Looks like the chief's asleep. He might thank us for waking him out of a nice dream." "Ah, that's true. Let's leave it until later." And thank you for all those who are watching. I appreciate you so very much. Chapter 8. Asmodeus' eyes glared through the narrow hole in front of him. There were two creatures standing together in the big cavern, a shrew and a mouse. He hissed in anger. The mouse was holding his sword, his own beautiful sword. The adder bunched his sinewy coils and shot through the skin-hung opening. He bared his evil, poisoned fangs. No mouse was going to steal the sword of the serpent. Matthias seized the frightened gorilla shrew by his paw, pulling him along at a swift run. "Asmodeus must know we're here by now. Come on, Log-a-Log, let's get out of this place, quick!" They hurried down the nearest opening, immediately spinning around and racing back. Asmodeus was in the passage, sliding towards them. They paused momentarily in the big cavern. With the shrew on one paw and the sword on the other, Matthias looked wildly about. "Over there, Log-a-Log! Move!" Skirting the edges of the shimmering pool, the two friends dashed into a smallish tunnel at the other side. Behind them in the cavern, the giant adder settled down to a leisurely slither. His tongue flickered wickedly. "Asmodeus! No hurry, no. They are not going anywhere." With a cry of dismay, the fleeing pair saw the blank wall ahead. They had run into a cul-de-sac. Log-a-Log had stopped. His teeth were beginning to chatter. "There's no way out! We're trapped!" Matthias continued running to the dead end. He felt the surface of the wall and ran his paws up and down it. We must do something, he panted. There must be some way to escape the snake. Get a hold of yourself, Shrew. Think! Asmodeus poked his head into the entrance. His sibilant voice called into them. Stay where you are, little ones. I will come to you, Asmodeus. Log-a-Log had gone frigid with fright. He stood petrified. Matthias had begun digging furiously at the wall with his sword point. He gouged and thrusted, muttering to himself, At least we've got nothing to lose but a sword in our lives. There might be something on the other side. The sword struck a tree root. He dug it round it, probing busily until the soft, half-formed sandstone gave beneath the blade. Frantically, Matthias redoubled his efforts. Log-a-Log gave a strangled sob. In the dim distance of the tunnel, Asmodeus could be seen advancing slowly but surely towards them. Matthias felt the sword of Martin break through the stone. He looked back over his shoulder. The giant adder was slithering closer with each passing second. He hacked madly to widen the opening it had made. Sticking the sword in the ground, he grabbed Log-a-Log and shook him soundly. Here, Shrew! You're smaller than I am. Climb through. Then see if you can tug me backwards. But on my feet, come on, move for yourself if you want to live. Log-a-Log came out of his trance. Leaping quickly into the tunnel, he scratched the damp sandy grit left and right. Ducking beneath the tree root, he scrambled awkwardly through into a tiny cell-like space on the other side. Asmodeus was close to Matthias now. Wielding the sword, the young mouse backed off. He felt the hole behind him and scrambled into it sideways, still facing his enemy. Taking care not to let the sword point drop, he shouted to his companion, Log-a-Log, can you see my feet? Grab hold of them. Pull me through. Matthias hung uncomfortably. He tightened his paws on the sword handle and moved it from side to side with the sway of the big viper's head. Suddenly, he felt the shrew pulling on his feet, wriggling his body. Matthias started to move backwards. Asmodeus bared his fangs. He moved forward at the struggling mouse. Matthias swung the blade at the snake's open mouth. It hissed and recoiled. As Matthias contorted himself to negotiate the tree root, he poked the point of the blade at his enemy's head. Stay back, evil one! I'll kill you! He shouted. Asmodeus gave a low, soothing hiss. Come to me, little mouse. Let me wrap myself around you. I will give you the kiss of eternal sleep. With a triumphant shout, the young mouse disappeared completely into the hole. He fell on top of Log-a-Log at the other side. Forcefully, the snake launched his gray body at the opening, crumbling earth and rock as he pushed his coils through the aperture. He's coming! Log-a-Log screamed in terror. Matthias shoved his friend behind him. Planting his feet wide apart, he hefted the great sword in both paws. Stay out of the way, Shrew! There's no more retreating! All ends here! The gigantic spade-like head of the snake thrust itself through the small space. Give me my sword, mouse. I will make your dying easy. He hissed. Matthias laughed in the face of the adder. Ha! Come and get it, poison teeth! Asmodeus tried forcing his body through one swift thrust. He found his bunched coils jammed firmly in the tree root. Relaxing, he allowed his head to wave from one side to side. Look at me, my friend. I can see that you are a great warrior. You are not afraid to gaze into my eyes. He is not afraid. Y'all. Oh, hi, Gene. Thank you for watching. We're going to up the ante just a bit. I'm going to switch up the music just a tad. Bear with me. Hmm. Hopefully everybody's having a good night. We are coming to one of the major climaxes of the story.
So every video is like this?
You are not afraid to gaze into my eyes. Look at me. The eyes seem to expand and dilate until they fill the whole of Matthias's vision. They dominated him. He could not tear his gaze away. Asmodeus continued in a persuasive undertone. See, they are the twin pools of eternity. Sink into them, and you'll find darkness and rest. Log-a-Log was completely hypnotized. Matthias, too, felt overcome by an immense lethargy. The adder's voice was as cold, dark, green velvet fog that threatened to envelop him. He stared deeply into the deadly eyes. His lids began to droop heavily. Martin the warrior strolled boldly up through the dark mist. I am, that is. Matthias, why do you sleep? There is a warrior's work to be done. Pick up your sword. Matthias, the evil one shall not have it. Strike out for me now. My brave young champion. Asmodeus was working his body free, pushing forward. Matthias's eyes were shut. His lips moved with one word. Strike! Suddenly, the spell of the snake was broken. The young mouse's eyes snapped open, clear and bright. He swung the ancient sword high and struck at the giant adder. He struck for Redwall. He struck for evil. He struck for Martin. He struck for Log-a-Log and his shrews. He struck for dead Gaussum. He struck as Methuselah would have wanted him to. He struck against Clooney the Scourge and Tyranny. He struck against Captain Snow's ridicule. He struck for the world of light and freedom. He struck until his paws ached and the sword fell from them. When Log-a-Log awoke from out of the trance, he saw his friend Matthias the warrior. He stood shaking. His chest heaved with exertion. His paws hung limp at his sides. The great sword lay against the warrior's blood-flecked habit, its long, deadly blade crimsoned in victory. At the end, it was the head of Asmodeus Poison Teeth, the giant adder, lay severed upon the ground, its eyes dulled in death, never again to hypnotize another living creature. Chapter 9. It was the afternoon of the following day. Matthias marched into the farmyard at the head of all the guerrilla union of shrews and mossflower. He halted the entire regiment outside the barn and turned to Log-a-Log. Wait here, my friend. There's someone I have to see. The young mouse stood in the gloom of the barn, knowing he was being watched. Without turning or looking around, he addressed the cat. Julian, it is Matthias. I've returned. The marmalade cat loomed up out of the half-light. So I see. Welcome, little friend. Is that the sword you spoke of? Matthias proffered the blade for inspection. It is indeed. Asmodeus, the snake, lies dead. I slew him with this very weapon. It is the great sword of Martin the warrior. Squire Julian Gingerbeard handled the sword with care. He laid it on a hay pail. Sitting next to it, he folded his paws underneath him and half shut his eyes. Matthias, let me give you some good advice. I am much older than you and have seen far more of life. There are not many illusions left to me, and I do not want to shatter your dreams or blight your ambitions, my friend. But I must say what I have to. We squires of Gingervere are an ancient line. In the past, I have seen many such tokens as this weapon. My grandsires owned a vast armory full of magnificent and valued battle equipment. No doubt your sword is indeed a beautiful thing. It is tribute to whomever forged it in bygone ages. There are very few such swords as this one left in the world. But remember, it is only a sword, Matthias. It contains no secret spell, nor holds within its blade any magical power. This sword is made for one purpose, and one purpose only: to kill. It would only be as good or evil as the one who wields it. I know that you intend to use it only for the good of your abbey, Matthias. Do so, but never allow yourself to be tempted into using it in a careless or idle manner. It would inevitably cost you your life, or that of your dear ones. Martin the warrior used the sword only for right and good. This is why it has become a symbol of power to Redwall. Knowledge is gained through wisdom, my friend. Use the sword wisely. Matthias picked up his weapon. He was surprised at Julian's words. They were an echo of something that his old companion Methuselah had once said to him. "Thank you, Julian," he said. "I will remember your lesson well. Now I must ask a favour of you. Would you come with me? I want you to be present when I speak to Captain Snow." The cat sniffed disdainfully. "You ask a lot. I wouldn't do this for anyone else, you know." Reluctantly, Julian stalked out into the sunlight with Matthias. There was an immediate spat of loud, frightened chatter from the regiment of gorilla shrews. Squire Julian Gingervere merely nodded and addressed them in a regal but distant manner. "Good afternoon. Very clement weather for the time of year, don't you think?" For the first time since the formation of their union, the shrews stood in slack-jawed silence, completely lost for an answer. As they strode along, Julian protested to his companion. "Really, Matthias, I think you're asking a bit much of one. Does one have to stand around listening to that befeathered regimental bore giving air to his high-bound militaristic views? Oh, it's too much." Matthias stroked the sulky cat's forepaw. "Come on, Julian. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised." The marmalade cat stifled a yawn. "You don't say. Has another tree fallen on the pompous old fool?" Captain Snow paced around the base of his nest tree. He glared at the cat, then at the mouse holding the sword. He snorted, hunching his neck into ruffles, folding his wings behind him. "Listen, mouse, I don't want to hear how you did it. Probably wouldn't believe you anyhow. But here you are, and I suppose that's that." Matthias hid a smile. He tapped his foot in mock impatience. "I'm waiting, Captain Snow. Sir, remember your promises on oath." The owl's eyes bulged with ill temper. He flung Basil's medal at the young mouse's feet. "There, take your medal back, you insolent little pup. I'm not saying another word while that salad-eating cat is within hearing range." Matthias traced patterns in the dust with the sword point and spoke civilly to the owl. "Well, Captain Snow, sir, I never took you for a bad sport. Besides, I've got an entire regiment of shrews hunting all about. They're waiting to hear your honour, your wager." The owl spread his wide, snowy wings and flapped upwards to perch on the edge of his den. Folding the wings and shutting his eyes tightly, he shouted out with bad grace, "I promise never to kill or eat another mouse of shrew of any type as long as I live, so there!" He hooted and vanished swiftly into his den. Instantly, the shrews broke cover, dancing and whooping with delight. Captain Snow popped his head out of the nest. "Go away! Be gone! I can't stand it! All those little dinners dancing around! It's too much, I tell you!" "Excuse my mentioning it, sir," Matthias shouted out over the hubbub, "but what about your promise regarding our friend the squire?" The owl emerged grumpy and ruffled. Thoroughly humiliated, he called out his former friend the cat. It was all my fault, Julian. I apologize to you. He was completely taken aback at the cat's reply. Not at all, my dear friend. It is I that must apologize to you. The whole incident was entirely due to my priggishness and lack of manners. Captain Snow swooped down and perched near the cat. Do you really think so? Oh, come on, Julian, old chap. I must share the blame. It was my barrack room feeding habits that started the whole thing. You mustn't blame yourself, old friend. A rare smile covered the features of the normally laconic Julian. He purred comfortingly. No, I insist that we share the blame 50-50. Besides, the question wouldn't arise now that you've sworn off shrews and mice. I say, have you tried a fresh trout salad with mustard and cress? Why don't you come over to the barn? I'm sure there'll be enough for two. I mean, trout's not exactly a vegetable, is it? Wing and Paw, the reunited comrades, strolled off to the barn, chatting amiably as if they had never been a crossword between them. Julian was last to enter the barn. He gave Matthias a broad wink. Who knows, my friend? Maybe the sword does possess some magic. Personally, I think it's the warrior who wields it. For the first time in many days, Matthias laughed heartily. He felt so good within himself. After all the action and mental strain, travel, and grief, he felt suddenly reborn, larger than life and brimming with newfound self-confidence. Certainly there were great difficulties and hard tasks ahead of him. When the time came, he would handle them. For the present, he was satisfied with this feeling of immense happiness. Holding the sword lightly, he balanced its point against the earth and laughed freely. It was infectious. Log-a-Log joined in. Then one gorilla shrew, then another, and still yet more, until the whole regiment and the warrior mouse friends set the countryside ringing from river to woods to farm and field with the happy sounds of their honest joy. And that is where we will end, because we only have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We only have 6 chapters left. Pretty sure there's 15 chapters in here. And let me tell you, this finale is going to be a doozy. Considering that I am off tomorrow and all I have to do is laundry, we will definitely be finishing this, and then we will start Peter Pan in the evening. And for my friends on Instagram, I don't have the book over here with me, but I can grab it real fast. Oh, these old bones. Okay. Alright. So, if you didn't know, I also have started to do story time on Instagram. Our first book on Instagram was The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle, which if anybody has any really good recommendations else from him, like fiction-wise, please let me know. We finished that. It was a lot of fun. And we're going on with my favorite book of all time. I have a list of my favorites. This one is number 1. The Never-Ending Story. I know the theme song from the movie is going through your head, and yes, the movie is pretty awesome. Only with a couple of exceptions. The first movie, I will have to say, has to be the most accurate adaptation to the novel, with a couple of exceptions, because they had to cut out a lot of plot from the book to make the first movie work. It would have been too long with some support characters and the lore around those characters and other creatures of Fantastica, which that's what the land is called. It's called Fantastica. It was not Fantasia. If they ever remake that movie, I would love for it to be a very close adaptation to the book, because technically, and like they did in the movie, there were two movies. There was The Never-Ending Story, and then what's it called? Hold on. Because I have both movies. Yeah, I have both movies out here. Yes, The Never-Ending Story 2, The Next Chapter. Gosh, I haven't watched those movies. I should totally watch that tonight. But yeah, if anybody knows about Atreyu and Artax and the Swamps of Sadness, get into it, okay? Because we are reading this, okay? So if you would like to join me on Instagram for story time, please do so. And of course, I will upload the episode after I am done. Thank you so much, y'all. Y'all have a lovely night. And I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye, y'all.